Good morning. Looks like we've got everybody who's going to be attending this morning, so we'll go ahead and get started. I'm Michelle Abraham. I'm a market research analyst. I've been researching video technologies primarily for over 20 years, though that's sad to admit. For those of you who are unfamiliar with S&P Global Market Intelligence, we are primarily a data and information services provider for a number of industries, one of which is the media and communications industry. Some of you might be more familiar with us as Kagan, which is the division that I work for that does media and communications research on pay TV providers, broadcasters, movie studios, programmers, TV networks, broadband services, and a whole host of other things. I myself am part of the technology area that, as I mentioned, does a lot of technology research. The data that I'm going to present to you is actually from consumer surveys that we undertake. We do 2 each year in the US, one towards the beginning of the year and one in the second half of the year. And then we've also got data in here from other countries where we do surveys, some countries in Europe, countries in Asia. So I've kind of put together insights from these surveys that I thought would interest the audience at Streaming Media West. So we'll get started with cord cutting. It's no surprise to anybody that cord cutting continues to grow in the United States. At the end of 2017, there were 34 million TV households that either were cord cutters or we referred to as cord nevers, in that they had never subscribed to a pay TV service. So about half, 17.4 million, were actually cord cutters. And while the trend in the first and second quarter of 2018 had showed some slowing in that movement, as Warren mentioned in his presentation this morning, there were over 1 million households who cut the cord in the third quarter of 2018. So, we do see that trend as that shift that he mentioned is likely to continue. The challenge for the pay TV operators and the TV networks is, of course, how do they change? How do they adapt to that? And certainly virtual multi-channel services or the programmer's own direct-to-consumer services are one of the ways that they're adapting to that. And I did forget to mention earlier, we can have questions all the way along. There isn't anybody with a microphone, but if you do have a question, raise your hand. I'll repeat the question and do my best to answer it. So feel free in the middle of the presentation. You don't need to hear me keep going on and on and on. So when we look at who's cutting the cord, it's no surprise that the younger generation, what is referred to as Generation Z, and then the millennials, or the generation above them, are some of the primary cord cutters. And I wanted, because I'm going to use those terms several times through the presentation, I wanted to define those. So Generation Z in 2018 are between 18 and 21 years old and younger, but we survey those who are 18 and older. So for our purposes, they're 18 to 21. The millennials are actually 22 to 38. And then Gen X in 2000, some of this data is from 2017, so you'll see that 38 to 51. But in 2018, the Gen X generation is 39 to 51. And then, 52. And then the boomers are 53 to 72, and the senior generation is 73 and older. So it's certainly not just the millennials who've cut the cord. In fact, between 2016 and 2017, you see some of the highest growth in the generation cutting the cord has actually been the Gen X generation. And it's not just people cutting for reasons of cost. Cost is certainly a significant part, again, as Warren mentioned this morning, but it's not just lower income households who've cut the cord if they ever had a cord to begin with. It's also higher income households. We had show of hands earlier, some of us have certainly cut the cord. And, you look at here, the chart shows, education levels. It's not just those with lower education levels. It's certainly those with higher education, those who are four-year degrees, were the group that grew the most between 2016 and 2017. Outside the U.S., cord cutting has not been as big of a trend. In some reasons, that's because pay TV penetration wasn't as high in some countries as it had traditionally been in the United States. So you can see in the chart that shows the UK, Germany, France, and South Korea, each year there hasn't been too much variation in households that respond that they subscribe to a pay TV service. In Europe, we have seen some of the shift has actually been from, say, satellite services to IPTV services, or that are offered by the telcos, who often bundle a video service, which may be a streamed service with broadband and voice services, just as we have in the United States. There, sometimes it's it's a lot less expensive. The bundle, it pretty much makes the video. You're getting video almost free. You also have in Europe, in some of the countries where your video subscription is part of your rent. So, that also holds back cord cutting in some of those areas. But it is, having an impact. I don't remember how long ago it was, but Sky of the UK had mentioned that they can foresee a day when they will no longer distribute video via satellite, and they will move to all streaming. They have a streaming offer now, and at some point it may make sense for them to not pay the satellite transmission costs any longer. So if we look at kind of, what is happening, as we mentioned, 17 million households who've cut the cord, they're not all going to the virtual multi-channel services like Sling or DirecTV Now or YouTube. We've actually show that today there's about, as he said, 7 million virtual multi-channel subscribers. And we expect that to grow to about 15 million in 2022. So that there are households who are choosing then, no pay TV like traditional programmer type of service at all. When we look at who's paying, as Warren mentioned, churn has definitely been an issue. And about 6% of those surveyed said that they have a subscription. However, many of them are taking advantage of those free offers that they get and aren't necessarily paying, or they may be sharing passwords. So again, that's another thing that any kind of virtual multi-channel or any kind of OTT service provider has to determine is how strict are they around the controls of password sharing in terms of getting people to sign up on their own as opposed to sharing that subscription with somebody else. So there, as Warren mentioned, there's certainly a lot of trialing going on. One thing that is surprising is that about half of those who said that they were paying a subscription for a virtual multi-channel service are also pay TV subscribers. I'm not sure why you would want both, because most of the pay TV services now offer their own TV Everywhere multi-screen services. So it's an interesting overlap, and one that unfortunately in the survey we don't have an answer to as to why would you sign up and pay the money for both. Because to me it doesn't really seem necessary. When we look at the TV Everywhere services, service providers have certainly put a lot of effort and investment in bringing TV Everywhere services to their subscribers, yet 42% of the respondents in our survey said they don't use it. So, not surprisingly, when you look across the generations, the usage is greater by the younger respondents and tapers off as each generation, with each successive generation. Many report doing more viewing of their TV Everywhere services inside their home than outside their home. So whether they're using TV Everywhere for somebody to watch something because, the other larger screen is tied up, or they've, specifically chosen to put TV Everywhere on, an additional, whether it's, a TV or, however it is, you've got more, more accessibility for the screens that you do have in the home and using them to their fullest capability rather than needing TVs for everybody who wants to watch. But yes, more of the viewing is reportedly done in the home. And many of them are using TV Everywhere services for linear TV viewing, more so than on demand. It's not a huge difference, but the percentage reported higher. And those who are more likely to use the TV Everywhere services were more likely to subscribe to one of the services from the telcos as opposed to the cable or satellite providers. In fact, it was UVerse and Fios subscribers reported that they were most likely to use their TV Everywhere services, followed by DirecTV, Comcast, Charter, and then Optimum Cablevision. The rest, less than half of their subscribers, reported that they were even using the TV Everywhere services. So I think work still needs to be done there in making consumers aware of what's available, as well as making it easy. Because if you've ever tried it, it's not always easy. I know my own example, I don't know why, but I'll be required to log in, sometimes every day. And it's like, but it's supposed to stick, so that I just have to open this. So still some issues to solve there. So if we move over to what we have seen or heard from our surveys regarding subscription VOD, certainly, it's no surprise that if you look, this starts in the surveys first survey shown is from the first quarter of 2014. The percentage of those who've said that they have subscribed to a subscription VOD service has grown each quarter, each year as we've done the survey. We've got 5 years of results there. So while, it was only about half of our respondents in the first quarter of 2014, that's grown to almost 3/4 in the first quarter of 2018. So those services are certainly maturing and kind of looking at, where are they going to get more subscribers in the future, because they're kind of running out of room, at least in the United States. And many pay TV households subscribe to subscription VOD as well. So, we've had about 70% of those who have SVOD subscriptions also have a pay TV subscription. So, of course, the two are not mutually exclusive. And subscription VOD is quite a long tail. Of course, Netflix is the most likely subscribed to, and then Amazon Prime Video, although you could make an argument that there are those who are receiving Amazon Prime Video who may not have signed up strictly for the video service, but it's still an option for them. But, we've looked at asked some of the rest, and this is by no means an exhaustive list of everything that was out there. This is just what was put in front of respondents as, offering them the choices when the survey was conducted. Their services do seem to come and go. Disney is going to launch in 2019, and we'll see how that changes the market. And then, it was just announced that Drama Fever and Filmstruck are going to be exiting the market. So one of the things that I see from those who supply any kind of technologies to these providers is you really have to be cognizant of the sometimes transient nature of your customers, that you don't invest too much in developing something for one customer that you can't get what you need to out of it before that customer may decide for whatever reason to no longer stay in business. Yeah, go ahead.
Like the intersection here, like 58% of people have Netflix. Do you have any cross-sectional data, like you have Netflix, and Hulu, HBO now?
I believe, as far as the cross-section, there's 2 slides coming. So I do have data on, yes, those that subscribe to more than one. So yes, we do, on average, households are subscribing to 2 SVOD services. In fact, I'll just go to that. As far as the households. So as you can see, 16% of households have 4 or more services. 13% have 3 services. And there is certainly a lot of duplication between, Netflix and Amazon, or, Netflix and Hulu, HBO, for those that do have more than one streaming service. So yeah, over half of the Netflix households, for example, are, subscribe to Amazon Prime. So, it's one of those questions that remains in the industry as to how many are people going to be willing to sign up for. This is, data that is as of, I believe the survey was done earlier this year. Next year, will we get, it'll be a higher percentage that have at least 3 services. It's one of those, if you're looking, wanting to start a service, a big decision is, what is your revenue model going to be? And from a subscription angle, how are you going to get households, if you choose a subscription model, how are you going to get households who already have so many options to add yours? So, on the consumer side of things, how many are they going to want to manage? Or are they going to, you look far enough out, are we going to end up with somebody acting as an aggregator for all of these services, and you would more or less have a la carte pick of which services you want, but you only pay one bill, for example. But you do get up there and you start adding up, say it's an average of $10 per service, you get 10 services, and you're really back at a pay TV bill, which, as was mentioned this morning, one of the main reasons that people cut their pay TV is cost. Now, with it being, packages that you've chosen, one would assume you have a more vested interest rather than the enormous bundle of things that you may not be interested in. So it'll be definitely something that'll be interesting to see what happens in the future along those lines, as far as how much is too much in subscription VOD. So we look at SVOD by generation. It's no surprise that pretty much all the Gen Z and millennials that want a subscription to a subscription service have one. You're not going to be prospecting really for, households that haven't yet chosen to subscribe there. So, new subscriptions are increasingly coming from the older generations. So, you need to either get older generations they're more likely not to have an SVOD service yet, or again, you need to go and get households that already have at least one or maybe several, and add a new subscription service. So when we look worldwide, again, subscription video on demand is not a US-only phenomenon. It's, there are services available. Some are worldwide, some are only in a particular region, some are only in a particular country. But the countries that we surveyed in Europe, the penetration for subscription video on demand is not as high as it is in the US, but in South Korea, the responses we got back, it is pretty much a similar percentage in South Korea as it is in the United States. So there does seem to be a bit more room in the European markets for households that are not currently subscribers to an SVOD service to increase the penetration there. However, in European countries, there is, I think, to a certain extent, more competition for subscription video on demand when you have the public broadcasters who are putting out quite a lot of content and making it available for free without advertising. So something like the BBC iPlayer or the other public broadcasters in those countries that have done something similar. So it definitely offers an option for content viewing that we don't really have in the United States. When we look at the free ad-supported online video, at least in the US, many households view videos on YouTube. Facebook came in second. Again, there is a large number of options for free VOD viewing, and again, those continue to increase as well with new ones coming. So again, you have that option as far as a revenue model of having ad-supported video on demand services. The ad industry, of course, is going through its own transition as you get, dollars shifting. Digital video has done quite well, but there have been issues with viewability and fraud. So, a VOD service that's delivered to the TV, which in the ad industry is usually referred to as connected TV, is seen as a pretty safe place to buy advertising, and it's addressable, targeted, so you can, do a one-on-one targeting. You should know who that person is or some characteristics about them so that you can deliver them an ad that they would be interested in. So the idea is that, it would make and keep the customer engagement. Question in the back?
Yeah, two quick questions. Did you also do stuff on a global perspective, just like the US?
For the ad-supported?
On the free, besides the online video?
Yeah, I don't have any data. If they did ask any questions about that, I would have to go back and check, because right now I'm not aware of anything they did to ask about ad-supported video in the other countries.
Facebook's been late in the game with video, so is that a trend that they're catching up to YouTube? Is there a second place right now, so what's the trend?
I don't have trending data. I think this question was just asked on this survey. So without previous surveys to ask where you have repeated questions, this one was not repeated. So it's something that, hopefully that we'll continue to do in the future years, so we'll get that trend information. But at this point, we don't have it. But if you are interested in dynamic ad insertion and whatnot, I urge you, there's a session that's later on this afternoon, and I know because I'm one of the panelists, I'd urge you to attend that one, so shameless plug. When it comes to mobile video, it's certainly growing. We do have the trend information here, and but the growth is slight. It's not dramatic that people are viewing more and more on their mobile. It is still the case that more of the mobile viewing is done at home rather than out of the house. So the trend for this shows for inside the home, the numbers really aren't that different in the United States for outside the home. But again, the numbers are still slightly higher in using mobile devices to view video in the home than outside the home, which, seems somewhat counterintuitive. One would almost expect the opposite, that more people would view video on their mobiles outside their homes if they have other options inside their home. As far as the mobile video use in Europe, in some of the other countries we've done, it's similar to what we see in the United States. If you put the U.S. in the chart, it would kind of be, I think, between France and Germany. And just as in the U.S. and the other countries where we've asked this question, the mobile viewing inside the home is slightly greater than the reported viewing outside the home. In South Korea, the percentage of respondents said they were viewing on their mobiles was much greater than it is in the U.S., and that is also in line with what we've seen in other Asian countries, so it seems to be definitely a regional difference. If we look at a survey we did in India, and now this, for anybody who's ever done surveys in India, it's very hard to reach the real broad population, so these are definitely more specific surveys of internet households or those who have mobile devices already. But viewing mobile video is extremely popular in India. We estimate that there are over 400 million people who have smartphones and who have 3G, 4G broadband connectivity in India, so offer an opportunity for streaming video services, or what is also common there are download and go type of services where they download it and then they can view it on their own later on. In fact, there are a lot of OTT providers serving the Indian market, and just saw another one announced, kind of stuck in my head a few days ago, called JPR Digital. So that people continue to see opportunity to capture some of that video viewing in India. And the video viewing, at least for those who are viewing most frequently, so are on that side of the chart, those that are daily or several times per week are more likely to view in their home than outside their home. So that part of it seems pretty consistent. And we had also done, which I didn't put a chart up, but we've seen similar things in China, particularly among younger people, that it is an extremely high percentage of younger adults who are viewing video on mobile devices, much greater than what we see in the United States. When we look at the devices used for viewing video, the preference is on the TV, as we've talked about the mobile aspect. Definitely in these is across a number of different countries, so it does vary slightly with Germany being at the low end and China at the high end. But the preferred device for OTT video is still the television set. As you see in the chart at the bottom, looks at some of the different ways people are getting that video to their TV, whether it's coming directly to the TV because it's a smart TV, or whether they're connecting a PC to the TV, or a set-top box from their pay TV operator is an option. In some areas, the pay TV operators have added streaming services to their set-top boxes. So you definitely see, the Chinese respondents said they preferred to either use a smart TV or a PC connected to their TV. Well, in South Korea, the more popular way was a set-top box to the TV, or and the same actually held in the UK. So it really does vary greatly by what's available. When we look specifically at the US, The streaming media player is the most, or stick, is the most popular device. I think, they're inexpensive, they're pretty easy to use. If your TV gets too old, you might not be able to receive streaming services, so it's fairly easy to, add on a streaming media player. We do see the devices, sometimes what a device allows and doesn't allow kind of comes and goes. We saw that as far as video game consoles, and one of the questions was, what video game console do you own? And those who owned a Nintendo were least likely to use it to stream video. And unsurprisingly, Nintendo just announced that they won't be supporting streaming video on their devices come, I think, January 30th of 2019. So that, it can change. Sometimes, when a streaming service is launched, it's only available on a few devices, and then it, slowly broadens support for more devices. When we asked the question, over a third of the respondents had more than one way to view streaming video to the TV. And, among the younger generations, they might have as 3 or more devices that are capable of streaming video to their TV. So in the US, when we looked at the streaming media players and streaming sticks, the respondents were pretty evenly split as to whether they had a streaming media player or a streaming stick. So, these show the trend. Asked the question in the first quarter of 2017 and again in the first quarter of 2018. And you see some of the devices staying pretty stable as far as the respondents using them. Amazon Fire TV streaming stick definitely showed a lot of growth in that time frame. Interestingly, when we look at it from a generational perspective, the boomer senior respondents were more likely to be Roku box or stick users. I sometimes wonder whether that's because somebody gave it to them and somebody else made the choice. It's sometimes hard to know. While the younger Generation Z millennial respondents were more likely to use Apple TV or Chromecast. So it kind of does vary, and that decision as far as which devices you should be present on, if you're a service provider, should vary by who your target audience is. So certainly the popularity of streaming media players worldwide is leading to increased shipments of those devices. We're expecting about 36 million to ship worldwide in 2018, and then a similar amount of streaming sticks to ship. So, yes, question.
Are game consoles included in the other, or not included at all?
In this particular one, they're not. If I go back to this chart here for the U.S., about 20% used video game consoles. Said that that's how they connected to receive a streaming service on their TV, was to go through their video game console.
So that next slide is just a breakdown of this 44% thing?
Yes. It was just to show kind of, and not just to break, but to show the difference. And it doesn't always add up to 100% or, to the 44, because there are households who certainly have, more than one. They might have a Roku and an Apple TV or, multiple devices. I confess to being one of those households that has a couple different options depending on which TV you're going through. Yep.
What about live streaming services like Cordcutting? Do you get any data on the breakdown of watching patterns of devices between VOD services like Netflix, Cordcutting?
As far as I would have to look and get back to you, because I don't have in this presentation anything that shows the difference between the devices used for live versus on-demand viewing as to whether it's, it's different, but I think, you know, with the data we have, that it would be possible to answer that question. So if you want to give me your information afterwards, I should be able to get back to you on that. Were there any other questions? Because pretty much that's all I had. I do thank you for your time and your attention. Hopefully you found some good information.